There are concepts that marred our formative years due to their outlandish nature. The ideas were dismissed as mere fantasies, but as the truth begins to spill out, we learn just how true paranoid delusions were. And now, our history is marred by something far more sinister than a mere conspiracy theory. If war wasn't enough to disfigure our past, fear-mongering and propaganda were also added to the mix. It was just after the Second World War that the democratic United States and the communist Soviet Union found themselves in another conflict. The political and economic clash was dubbed the Cold War, a name that highlighted an intense rivalry between two world superpowers. From 1947, the global geopolitical rivalry pressed on, increasing fear of nuclear annihilation and intensifying proxy wars. The Cold War didn't end until the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. During those 44 years, much would happen, including the development of advanced weapons, the space race, and the Red Scare. The Red Scare was a hysteria, fear-mongering in the form of a conspiracy theory. The scare was the fear over the perceived threat posed by communists in the US amid the Cold War. It led to a range of actions that would have a profound impact on the government and society as a whole. Federal employees would be analyzed extensively in order to deem them trustworthy and loyal to the House Un-American Activities Committee, with the United States Senator Joseph R. McCarthy investigating allegations of inflammatory aspects within the government, as well as the film industry. The first Red Scare, Reds being the communist under the allegiance of the Red Soviet flag, first began in the wake of the First World War and bled into the Cold War era, when concerns were raised that there were communists and sympathizers inside the United States that may be working as Soviet spies, posing a great threat to American security. The idea itself was not unfounded, though. The USSR had long carried out espionage within American borders, often with the aid of its citizens, particularly amid the Second World War. As the Cold War began to heat up, the government began to employ various means of exposing communists working inside the federal government. The fear would continue to mount through the 44 years, and it wasn't helped by the fear-mongering set forth by congressional investigator Senator McCarthy. He would use hearsay and intimidation, which would establish him as a feared figure in American politics. His reign of terror against celebrities, intellectuals, or anyone who challenged his views would continue to fan the flames of a growing hysteria and conservatism. The advancement of communism, beginning in 1949, further heightened concerns among American citizens that there was real danger of Reds taking over their country, as so spread by McCarthy and even J. Edgar Hoover. Together, they would intensify the idea of the possibility that there were Soviets present within the US who were going to take over the country, or at least greatly influence it. The Red Scare subsequently intensified for years until McCarthy's colleagues ended his reign of terror in 1954. It was only in the late 50s that the climate of repression and fear would begin to ease off. Still, the claims made by the senator hung over the political industry of the US. He alleged that numerous Soviet spies and sympathizers had infiltrated not only the government, but also the film industry and universities. McCarthy, of course, was viewed as a fearmongerer who only sought to instill fear in many to bolster his political career. But in recent years, as more classified papers have been publicized, we may find that some theorists, such as McCarthy, may not have been too far off the mark. In recent years, the Venona papers revealed something truly alarming that made McCarthy look less insane. It turned out that in February of 1943, a group known as the U.S. Army Signal Intelligence Service, the forerunner to the NSA, undertook a project that would intercept and analyze signal traffic that the Soviet Union was sending. The operation was codenamed Venona. It's only recently that the NSA started to release portions of the voluminous files on the project itself. What those documents hold has drastically changed the way we view the Cold War era, including propaganda and claims that were made during the period. The partially declassified Venona project ultimately revealed how the Soviet Union truly did penetrate the United States government, which was under the administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Communism had additionally infiltrated the American military and national defense industries. Venona transcripts, essentially revealed the existence of Soviet espionage in various sectors of America from as early as the First World War. Authorities were only able to successfully identify 125 of the 350 Soviet spies that were working within the American government. Even so, the Venona Project and its declassification would reveal a major espionage conspiracy and place McCarthy's Red Scare fear-mongering conspiracy right on the mark. Nestled in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, is one of the nation's greatest resorts, which has a history dating back to the Civil War era. It was used throughout the war by both the North and South. The Greenbrier Resort became a sanctuary in later years and continued to evolve. But it would also be this famous resort that would become the center of whispered rumors and shadowy secrets. Starting in the early 1960s, a strange narrative was being passed through the grapevine, one that spoke of the government sticking its fingers in the popular destination. Suggestions of an alleged secret bunker escaped the mouths of employees, and soon anyone and everyone in the vicinity was talking about it. They theorized that the sneaky American government had created a top-secret bunker right beneath Greenbrier's hotel. The talk was prompted by a random construction that took place just before the start of the 60s. The construction project had been started, unprovoked, by the government. In 1957, they decided that a new wing should be added to the hotel, and the building of the West Virginia wing commenced that following year. Even though the government maintained that nothing strange was going on, and they were simply adding an additional wing onto the hotel, where conferences were regularly held, locals and employees remained suspicious. At first, it would seem ludicrous to assume that the construction of an additional wing was just a cover for something much more sinister. But in recent years, those whispered words seemed to hold more weight than anyone could have imagined. The new building at the Greenbrier Resort took place amid the strenuous Cold War. It was no doubt random and certainly suspicious. It was a $14 million project, one that saw the use of an enormous hull, vast amounts of concrete that arrived by the truckload daily, huge steel doors, and the odd installation of 110 urinals without reason. But there was a reason, and the purpose of it wouldn't be revealed until 1992 by the Washington Post. It was that year that an article was publicized concerning the 1957 reconstruction of the hotel. Many questions had been left unanswered, and conspiracy theories abound, leading to further investigation and ultimately exposure. The Washington Post disclosed the real reason behind the building addition, confirming the suspicions that employees and locals latched onto for years. Beneath the West Virginia wing of the Greenbrier Hotel was a secret bunker. For more than 30 years, the government kept it a secret. They'd built an entire house beneath the hotel that would be occupied by the U.S. Congress and their staff in the event of full-on nuclear war. The facility was 2 football fields in size, with 18 dormitories that could accommodate 60 people. A cafeteria was instituted too, one that could seat 400 people. A power plant allowed for purified air and power. Decontamination showers and a subterranean hospital ward were among the features. The self-sustaining bunker would allow for enough food and fuel for at least 2 months at a time. Stories regarding rogue waves popped into existence as far back as the 19th century. It appears that the legends stemmed from one French explorer and a naval officer named Jules Dumont d'Urville. He'd already made a name for himself through botany, cartography, and sailing around the world. Yet Dumont's fame has been marred by something else. In a bold claim, the explorer alleged that he'd seen rogue waves over 100 feet tall while on his voyages. His claim had been bolstered by several eyewitnesses who were with him during these circumstances, yet no one would believe him. In fact, Prime Minister François Arago publicly ridiculed him. Skeptics based their doubts on the scientific consensus that waves the size of Dumont's description simply didn't exist. The standard models that were used by oceanographers, engineers, and meteorologists predicted wave height, which was used to rule out the possibility of giant rogue waves. The 19th century also saw very few eyewitness accounts, possibly due to the fact that they wouldn't make it back to shore after encountering such intense oceanic conditions. But in the 20th century, the conspiracy of the existence of rogue waves returned. With the evolution of steel-hulled ships, mariners were able to make it back to shore and recount their experience. The number of potential rogue wave survivors saw a dramatic increase that century, as did the number of sightings. Still, these freak waves were dismissed as nothing more than nautical folklore. Each time that mariners would retell their encounter, they were met with skepticism and alleged scientific debunkings. Then, in 1964, a Scottish oceanographer named Lawrence Draper wrote the first ever scientific article about what he called freak waves. In this article, he discussed the efforts made by the National Institute of Oceanography to record wave heights. He also detailed an analysis of the recordings made by a British weather ship, where the highest recorded wave was 67 feet. In 1971, Draper wrote another article in which he stated that the once ridiculed old sailor stories of enormous waves had been confirmed in modern research. He specified that such monstrous occurrences can happen. Even with Draper's research compiled into various articles and publicized, the concept was still met with much skepticism. The 1st of January, 1995, though, marked the dawn of a new era, an era in which rogue waves were real. It was that day that the first real measurement of a rogue wave occurred, and it was recorded by a laser detector situated on the Dropner oil drilling platform, 100 miles off the coast of Norway. The platform was built to withstand a wave of 64 feet, but this wave, dubbed the Dropner wave, measured a whopping 85 feet, with characteristics that didn't fit any previous wave records. In 2000, a British ship called the RRS Discovery recorded an even higher rogue wave, measuring 95 feet off the coast of Scotland. Despite stories about monstrous freak waves, scientists have only begun to accept the concept in the last few decades. Through further research, they were able to determine that these random forming waves were twice the size of the ones surrounding them. They're unpredictable and can often appear unexpectedly from any direction, regardless of wind. Most new scientific reports describe them as walls of water with steep sides and deep troughs. Through various studies, scientists concluded that as many as 10 rogues can be forming in the ocean at any given moment. We've all seen those white streaks trailing behind the jets as they zoom across the sky. Through a natural process of condensation, these contrails appear. They're formed when water vapor condenses and then freezes around an aircraft, specifically around its exhaust. Despite this scientific explanation, conspiracy theorists have suggested an alternative: chemtrails. This conspiracy theory is among the most well-known crazy concepts out there. The well-established idea posits that the trails were actually chemicals being sprayed on citizens by the very government that we trust with our lives. It may seem like a far-fetched narrative, but you can't really blame them. The chemtrail conspiracy theory is reminiscent of a time in which the government really was spraying chemicals on its citizens. The United States has been found guilty of testing chemicals and bioweapons on its very own country, not once but several times. In fact, the number keeps growing as more and more previously covert projects and operations are being exposed and declassified. In fact, numerous other theories, such as weather manipulation and mind control, have stemmed from the same subset. One such previously classified covert mass chemical testing was Operation LAC, or Operation Large Area Coverage. In the 1950s, the United States found itself in a standoff with the Soviet Union, bringing us back to the era of the Cold War. Of course, the government of the United States needed to be ready for absolutely anything. Chemical attacks, nuclear warfare, or physical bombardments were the aspects that gave them a reason to install a nuclear bunker beneath a notable resort. It also seemed that the threat of chemical or bio-warfare gave the government the justification to start creating their own chemical weaponry. Of course, you can't have such weapons without running them through sufficient tests to ensure that they would do the intended job. During the time that the US began developing these weapons, they didn't have access to the Russian cities where they would otherwise have tested them. Launching a chemical attack on their enemies would have thrown them into a full-blown war, so the government had to find another way to test their biochemical weaponry. So they turned to America's very own population. Between 1957 and 1958, Operation LAC was employed by the United States Army Chemical Corps and the Air Force. These two organizations would work together to release a spray of chemicals over a large area populated by American citizens. The project saw the release of microscopic zinc-cadmium sulfide particles, or ZNCDs, over several cities. Making use of a CD-119 flying boxcar, the military released tons of potentially hazardous materials on its own citizens. While the chemical is relatively harmless initially, long-term exposure can lead to serious medical conditions and has even recently been linked to the development of cancer. Just among the few listed issues are kidney impairment, bone weakness, and respiratory tract infection. Operation LAC wasn't limited to just planes. The military would also station themselves on top of high-rise buildings in cities and install blowers on them. The blowers would then emit the chemical that they were testing over the immediate area. Those high-rise buildings weren't just random skyscrapers, they were tall apartment buildings where people lived, and schools that children would attend. They would even place blowers in station wagons to spread the chemicals closer to the ground. The tests were supposedly designed to determine the dispersion and geographic range of biological and chemical agents. Ground-based stations would track the fluorescent particles to determine the dispersion range, but it also caused respiratory issues and weakness in Americans. It began in the fall of 1977. One by one, they began to disappear. Women, men, and children began inexplicably vanishing from Japan's coastal towns. First, it was a security guard taking the day off at the beach. He never returned home that September. Just 2 months later, a student was on her way back from school. She never made it home either, and was last seen just 800 feet away from her destination. The following year, in July, a couple disappeared from a local lover's lane. Their vehicle was found with no signs of a struggle and no indications of foul play. That same month, another couple would disappear too. They'd been riding their bicycles near a beach on their way to watch a fireworks display. These unexplainable disappearances were so odd that local newspapers began comparing them to alien abductions. Some wondered if there was a homicidal maniac on the loose. They even began to come up with personalized theories. They guessed that the couple just took off, that the student had run away, or that the security guard willingly disappeared. Some even theorized that Japanese citizens disappearing was part of a much larger plot. In fact, a handful of people suggested that North Korea was secretly kidnapping them. It was certainly a wild conspiracy theory, outlandish and lacking in support. Little did these conspiracy theorists know just how right they truly were. The concept of secret abductions was already long held by the time the truth was exposed. Between 1977 and 1983, hundreds of Japanese citizens went missing from the coastal towns of the East Asian country. It's uncertain as to how the theorists arrived at their conclusion, but it seemed too implausible to be true, leading to skepticism and subsequently a slow reaction. North Korea itself consistently denied being behind the abductions since they began. Still, many citizens pointed at North Korean government agents, claiming that they were taking Japanese citizens for nefarious reasons. Tongryeon and the Japanese Socialist Party further backed North Korea and considered the abduction rumors to be nothing more than a myth, a conspiracy theory. For years, people continued to disappear, and the government lied, denied, and dismissed the claims. But the conspiracy theory wasn't a myth at all, and the truth was exposed in 2002. That year, North Korean leader Kim Jong-il admitted that the country had in fact illegally abducted as many as 13 Japanese citizens. Today, there are 17 individuals who Japanese authorities have recognized as missing citizens, but that number could run well into the hundreds. 5 of the 17 recognized citizens were returned to Japan, but the country is still seeking answers. North Korea apologized and promised to ensure that nothing like this would happen in the future, but an explanation was never secured. It's widely believed that the reason behind the abductions was for victims to teach Japanese to North Korean spy schools, where spies could then be introduced in Japan, undercover, appearing as other Japanese residents. Other speculations suggest that the victims were brainwashed instead to be deployed as spies themselves, or they would serve in groups and work to destabilize the country. The reason behind the abductions of South Korean and Japanese citizens, though, remains a mystery today. Operation LAC wasn't the only time that the United States unleashed biochemical weapons testing upon its citizens. Numerous scenarios are recently being declassified, telling the story of chemical testing as so theorized by an estranged group of people. Another project reminiscent of chemical testing was the combined Project 112 and Project Shad, or Shipboard Hazard and Defense. Again, taking us back to the Cold War era, the United States launched Project 112, another covert mission designed to test biological and chemical weaponry. It began in 1962 and ran until 1973, allowing the government to study how their biological agents behaved in different conditions, notably on land and at sea. Branching off from the initial project was Project Shad, which involved around 6,000 service members, most of whom were either from the Navy and Army, and a few were from the Marines or the Air Force. This project sought to conduct chemical tests under the display of defense research, but it turned out that not all 6,000 or so individuals who took part in the chemical tests were aware of what they were doing. Many of them had no knowledge that they were working with or in close proximity to dangerous agents. A since-retired Navy officer named Jack Alderson is the one who blew the whistle on the operation, claiming that many of those involved didn't know what they were doing and that they were being exposed to potentially harmful weapons. Alderson also accused the military, under the direction of the U.S. government, of unleashing chemical agents upon the crews aboard ships in the middle of the ocean. They also allegedly used some incredibly harsh decontamination products. Alderson would take his accusations to Congress, claiming that the exposure led to long-term health effects among the 6,000 or so men involved. Various studies were subsequently launched, and the claims were thoroughly investigated. Citing Public Law 107-314, information on covert missions had to be publicized. The documents relating to the experiments were deliberately withheld from the public eye, and even today, a lot of Project 112 and Project Shad remains shrouded in mystery. But in 2000, the Department of Defense began declassifying the records regarding the project and the effects that it had on those involved. So it seemed that the chemtrail conspiracy theorists were right again. Except this time, the government turned against their own military personnel, not even informing them that they were working with potentially dangerous chemical. Often referred to as the South Sider, the Chicago White Sox began their league of success in the late 1800s as the Sioux City Cornhuskers. The American professional baseball team would go on to win 3 World Series, 2 of which were in the 1900s, and the third being 88 years later. But through their largely successful run, the White Sox's history has been marred by one event. It was an event that would only be confirmed after wild conspiracies and outlandish rumors had spun out in the wake of the 1919 World Series. It was the 1st of October that year when the baseball team filed onto the field, overlooked by observers who believed they were one of the best teams ever. The opening game of the World Series saw the playoff between the Cincinnati Reds and the White Sox. No one would have expected the Cincinnati Reds to win. In the past 2 decades, leading up to the 1919 World Series, they often ranked at the bottom of National League standings. That year, though, a new manager and other additions would also allow the Reds to take a 9-game lead over the New York Giants. They would also win the National League pennant. Despite this sudden turnaround, no one thought that the Reds would win and believed that the White Sox could easily win the championship. But the Sox didn't win. Instead, they were beaten 9-1, a shocking defeat that would mark the start of a bad omen. The Sox would lose the series 5-3. It seemed impossible to observers and fans, so impossible that several theories began to emerge from the woodwork. Talks of a fixed game began to do the rounds in Chicago. It didn't seem out of the realm of possibility. In every sport, there's bound to be at least one scandal. Despite the rumors, though, many found themselves shocked and disappointed when the truth was finally revealed. The sporting world is more than just a few matches between opposing teams, and is certainly more than just winning. It has for a long time been a money-making scheme for professional gamblers. The odds at this point were favoring the White Sox, given that the Red had seen low ranks previously. Those professional gamblers saw this as an opportunity to make quite a bit of cash by betting on the underdog. All they needed was assistance from the better team players. When the White Sox lost the league, many could only wonder why and hope that those rumors were nothing more than just that. But a year later, disappointed fans would discover just how right those guesses were. It was found that in September of 1919, several players had agreed to receive a sum of $100,000 to underperform, which would allow professional gamblers to make a massive profit on bets. The United States wasn't the only country testing biochemical weapons on its citizens. It also wasn't the only country submerged in unrest and mistreatment. Located at the bottommost point of the African continent is South Africa, with coastlines stretching across the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. Despite being rich in biodiversity, fauna, and flora, it wasn't always the welcoming country as so viewed today. Apartheid was a racial segregation and discrimination system enforced in the country when the National Party codified it as state policy. It wasn't until the early 90s that the system would finally be dismantled. But during those 46 years, something more sinister than discrimination was at play, and it was called Project Coast, a covert chemical and biological weapons program. Officially, Project Coast began in 1981 under the guise of crowd control agents and defensive chemical and biological gear. In practice, though, the project focused more on the production of poison that could be used to assassinate state enemies, either within or outside of the country, laying the foundation of a potential discriminatory massacre. The operation was both conceived and carried out beyond the usual financial, political, and military control. In fact, Project Coast functioned on the basis of several front companies, personal relationships, and illicit transactions. The South African government, though, didn't make use of the controversial, disputed disease-causing ZNCDs. They used outright lethal agents like mustard gas and another chemical which caused corrosive skin and tissue injury. But among such chemicals, the government also sought to produce non-lethal agents to aid in suppressing internal dissent. This would ultimately lead to the use of recreational narcotics, along with medicinal narcotics. Investigations were made into these narcotics as a form of incapacitating agent. MDMA was essentially manufactured in large quantities and weaponized into dust that could be released into a rioting crowd. Biological weapons were also being produced simultaneously, one of which made use of black mamba venom, one of the most venomous snakes in South Africa. Research was also conducted into the use of E. coli as a potential bioweapon. Employment of these biochemical weapons was easy, and they weren't used for crowd control as initially stated. The Civil Cooperation Bureau directed the operations where the agents were released into the water supply in 1989. The water supply of Dobra, a refugee camp, was infected with yellow fever and cholera. Another contamination took place later that same year but failed due to high chlorine contact in the treated water supply at the camp. The government's focus on riot control quite clearly switched to outright discriminatory massacre. It was no longer considered a biochemical weapons test, but appeared to be a direct attempt to slaughter a large portion of the population. The British ocean liner, the RMS Lusitania, was owned by Cunard Line and built to compete in the transatlantic passenger trade. The vessel was launched in June of 1906, at the time being named the largest ship in the world, weighing over 30,000 tons. Although the ship was most certainly luxurious, it was more noted for its speed, which allowed it to win the blue ribbon for the fastest Atlantic crossing, averaging 24 knots. In May of 1915, the Lusitania headed back to Liverpool from New York, carrying 1,959 passengers and crew. Around that time, the sinking of merchant ships off the coast of Ireland had been reported, prompting the Admiralty to warn the ship, tell the captain to avoid the area, and also adopt the zigzagging tactic to confuse U-boats. But the captain of the ship ignored the warning, and that afternoon a torpedo struck the midships, causing an explosion, and a heavier explosion soon followed, damaging the steam engines and pipes. Just 20 minutes later, the Lusitania had sunk, and with it, its passengers, including 128 United States citizens. A German U-boat had been responsible for the maritime disaster. The sinking of the Lusitania prompted the abandoning of the United States neutrality and contributed to their decision to enter the war. But Germany believed that their torpedoing of the British vessel was warranted. They believed that it was carrying munitions aboard, which they suggested would be received by UK forces. Supporting their theory was the fact that the ocean liner itself had been specifically designed so that it could be converted into a merchant armed cruiser in wartime if necessary. But Britain denied that there were any munitions aboard, as Germany suggested. but many began to call into question the cause of that second explosion. The theories, of course, suggested that the explosions were caused by the weapons that were already being carried on board. Others suggested a steam pipe fracture, a boiler room, and even coal dust as culprits. Despite new alternatives, Germany maintained that their sinking of the Lusitania was warranted, still maintaining that it was carrying weapons that would inevitably be used against them. Their claims, of course, were constantly dismissed until 2019, when the wreckage was investigated. That year, a team of divers deployed an ROV to the wreck site. The ROV showed clear evidence of a vast amount of ammunition in the area of the site. Among some of the debris were .303 caliber casings that were used by the British military amid the First World War. The century-old debate about whether the ocean liner was transporting British war munitions was finally confirmed, and physical evidence supported the claims made by the Germans. Lusitania was, in fact, transporting weapons across the sea, and the crew and passengers were well aware of it. The oil industry has never been one to take part in the solution to the ongoing climate crisis. Newly uncovered documents make it glaringly clear. Much like Big Pharma, Big Oil also sought to capitalize on profits no matter what, even if it came down to causing direct harm to the environment. For almost a century, America's leading oil giants were left to line their pockets unchecked. Since the discovery of oil in 1859 and its usefulness, the world has run on that very substance. It gave way to the vehicle industry and electricity production, and is even crucial in the production of certain materials such as plastics and synthetic fibers. There's no doubt that the substance plays an important role in keeping society functioning. For decades, the United States was the main oil supplier that would essentially keep the world running, even if that meant fueling a climate crisis, melting the ice caps, and directly harming all living things on Earth. Big Oil, though, was not about to let anything stand in its way, including protesting conspiracy theorists who argued that they were harming the environment. The industry directly sought to block climate action by denying, lying, and dismissing any claims made against them. The leading businesses would go as far as having false studies written up to suggest that the effects that the oil industry has on the climate are inconclusive. Despite their denial, unrest continued, and many were pointing fingers at Big Oil for being a driving factor of climate change. By 2024, the industry was under attack as newly uncovered documents began to surface. 26 lawsuits were filed by American cities and states, all of which accuse Big Oil of deliberately deceiving the public. The industry was accused of suppressing warnings regarding global warming and climate change. They didn't just stop at denial, though. They went as far as burying their findings of their very own scientists when they didn't align with their narratives. Big Oil would also commission multiple studies that would suggest that their products were not harmful to the planet. These studies, though, still acted against their agenda, so in response, the documents were locked away. In recent years, those hidden results resurfaced, enraging citizens on a global scale. California was the first to press charges against Big Oil. The lawsuit against the corporate giants essentially revealed how the industry was lying to protect their profits. Simultaneously, they were pushing low-emission products, which were still polluting the environment. Years later, Greenpeace would expose one of those oil giants, ExxonMobil, who were secretly working against climate action while claiming to be in support of it, just like Big Oil. New documents further revealed that the industry knew of the harm it was causing to the environment as far back as 1959, despite its denial. In recent years, the industry has stopped explicitly denying that climate change is real and caused by humans. It's shifted to a deception and disinformation strategy, but those lawsuits aren't going away as one of the largest mass manipulation conspiracies that's ever been exposed. Theorists could only guess what was happening behind the closed doors of the government's most elusive entities. Conspiracy theories referenced mind control, biological warfare, and the development of nuclear weapons happening right under our noses. These ideas were passed off as mere delusions, but when some of them materialized into very real projects, the world was left stunned. In the making of Project MKUltra, it became easier for more conspiracy theories to be made and easier for the masses to believe. MKUltra was a program undertaken by the United States Central Intelligence Agency. The project focused on human experimentation with the development of narcotics that could potentially be used for interrogation purposes. The CIA was in search of products that would not just weaken individuals, but force them into confessions. It was the abuse of power that saw the covert administration of psychoactive narcotics, sensory deprivation, electroshocks, hypnosis, and torture. MKUltra is among the better-known secret operations, dictated by the very forces that are meant to protect us. But one secretive program is less mentioned, but was the immediate successor to the interrogation and human experimentation project. MK Naomi was connected to the 1950s Cold War project, designed and carried out by the CIA and their joint force, the U.S. Department of Defense. Declassified information regarding this covert operation is scarce, but it's known that the project sought to investigate biological warfare agents, including the storing and delivery of such agents. The materials were developed in such a way that they could either incapacitate or take the life of the test subject. The goal of the project was to determine substances and chemicals that could be used as weapons against enemies and targets. MKUltra focused on the weaponization of mind control, whereas MK Naomi focused on the weaponization of bacteria and viruses. It also delved into knockout gases and lethal poisons. The Technical Services Division of the CIA was tasked with developing an armory of potentially fatal weapons. The United States Special Operations Command was assigned to conduct and assist the testing of such materials. The project inevitably led to the creation of various weapons that could fire darts that were coated with some scary and often fatal biological agents, all of which were done without the authorization of Congress or the President. These coated darts would be used to render guard dogs incapacitated, allowing agents to infiltrate any area they wanted to. They would then use a remedial agent to awaken the sleeping dogs once they exited the area, covering their tracks as they did so. The Church Committee had uncovered a memo relating to MK Naomi in 1967, which seemingly related to using such weapons on crops. In 1969, following the discovery of the project and what it was really being used for, as well as the tests that were being conducted, Richard Nixon banned the use of biological weapons. By the end of the Church Committee's investigation into the operation, they discovered that the CIA had developed biological agents in such high quantities that the stockpile that they had acquired up until that point could potentially take out tens of thousands of citizens. They also had an arsenal of weapons that could be used to deliver them. Martin Luther King Jr. was a social activist and the leader of the civil rights movement in the U.S. He'd led the movement since the mid-1950s until his unfortunate assassination in 1968. After arriving in Memphis, Tennessee, King made the "I've been to the mountaintop" speech and was later assassinated on his balcony outside of his Lorraine motel room. Ever since the said assassination, various conspiracy theories have come about regarding why it happened and who was involved. It's often the case with the assassinations of high-up notable figures that conspiracy theories regarding the government begin to emerge. Such was the case with King, with theorists circulating the idea that the CIA or FBI had a hand in the assassination. Various aspects of the case were cited to bolster the idea of the government's involvement. This included the FBI reportedly anonymously emailing Coretta Scott King in an effort to destroy their marriage. On the day of the assassination, Solomon Jones, who was present at the time, claimed to have seen someone hiding in the nearby bushes, and the following day, Memphis Public Works employees removed that very bush. These were outlandish ideas that were being circulated at the time, along with the conspiracy that the same government forces were spying on King. Many saw this claim as another conspiracy theory running rampant, and skeptics argued against it. The idea that the CIA and FBI were surveying King remained nothing more than another out-there conspiracy theory until 2014. The theorists had tried to warn everyone, but their views were seen as senseless and wild. It turned out, though, that their ideas were accurate. The FBI had in fact been spying on the civil rights movement leader. From 1963 to 1968, the FBI had set out an intense campaign to discredit King. Through the Freedom of Information Act, all the files relating to the assassination of the activist became public knowledge. They revealed how the government had targeted him and his associates, which all began with wiretapping. The wiretapping soon ballooned into paying informants to spy on King. The files also showed evidence of the FBI shifting their focus onto his infidelity by bugging his hotel rooms. After gathering sufficient information about him, the FBI penned an anonymous letter and sent it to him, along with the tapes. Dubbed the FBI King letter, found by historian Beverly Gage in the unsealed files of J. Edgar Hoover, the former director of the FBI revealed that he was being brazenly threatened, using extramarital affairs as blackmail. After calling him a fraud, a psychopath, evil, and moronic, the letter further said, "King, there's only one thing left for you to do." The letter had been written as though it was from someone close to him and was unsigned. But since it was stashed in the files relating to the FBI and the surveillance campaign, it became clear that the writer was not someone close to him. Rather, he was written to by the Bureau in an effort to discourage him. So it turned out that the conspiracy theorists were right. The FBI was spying on King and was even blackmailing and threatening him. With this confirmed information, more theories about their hand in his assassination abound, but no definitive proof directly connects the government to the incident. At least not yet. Number 8. Compared to the biggest scandal ever committed by the world's leading financial banks, the Illuminati look like amateurs. Conspiracy theorists are owed an apology by skeptics who doubted their warning of the hidden hands of the Rothschilds, the Masons, and the Illuminati greedily submerged in the finances that run the world. The theorists were right. The world is just one big rigged game being controlled by unseen entities. While the players in this scandal may not be as sinister as the Illuminati, theorists were on the right track. In 2012 and 2013, stories of corruption began to spill out of the financial sectors. The story suggested that the world's largest and leading banks might be controlling anything that has to do with money, which is just about everything. The rumors suggested that the banks were fixing prices. It all began in 2012 with the Libor scandal that saw at least 3 massive banks manipulating the global interest rates. While doing so, they messed around with financial instruments worth more than $500 trillion. Libor, or London Interbank Offered Rate, serves as the global benchmark for interest rates concerning everything from credit cards to leading financial derivatives. It's the average interest calculated through the submission of interest rates by the leading banks all over the world. The scandal began in 2007 when Barclays alerted the United States regulator to the concern that other banks were submitting dishonest low interbank rates. The following year, after the collapse of the Lehman Brothers, Libor saw rates spike. In 2010, an investigation was carried out into Barclays as part of the probe into interest rate manipulation. By August of 2011, money manager Charles Schwab Corp. filed a lawsuit against 11 major banks, accusing them of conspiring to manipulate Libor. By mid-2012, Barclays was fined over rate rigging, and by August, the investigation of Libor sent subpoenas to the Royal Bank, HSBC Holdings, Barclays, UBS, and other banks. By the end of the year, the investigation found that Barclays, UBS, RBS, and Rabobank were all involved in the scandal. Also involved in the scandal was Tom Hayes, a trader for UBS and Citigroup, who conspired to manipulate Libor. In 2015, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison for his role in the world's biggest financial scandal in history. The Libor scandal caused distrust in the financial sectors, and many leading banks were fined billions of dollars. It seemed, though, that there were still greedy hands pulling the strings in the world's finances. While Libor was still a prominent entity in this scandal, a new character was introduced. ICAP is the London-based firm and world's largest broker of interest rate swaps. Major corporations and sovereign governments use interest rate swaps to manage debt. It's a $370 trillion market. Any manipulation at all would massively affect the assets hundreds of times the size of the federal budget. Investigations into ICAP revealed a scandal reminiscent of the Libor mess. It was found that a group of brokers within ICAP had worked with other large banks to manage ISDA Fix. ISDA Fix refers to the benchmark number used worldwide to calculate the prices of interest rate swaps. Unsurprisingly, those involved in the scandal of fixing the prices of interest rate swaps are the very same megabanks mentioned in the Lieber scandal, which includes Barclays, UBS, JP Morgan Chase, the Royal Bank, and Bank of America. These scandals, while they were reported, didn't gain the attention that other leading conspiracies did. This is because its scale was so massive that many would not be able to see it. It was not just the act of reaching a hand into a pocket and taking out the spare change. It was the act of theft in which the world's leading banks could hit a few crucial points and make whatever was in the pockets of society worth much less. It was corruption at its finest, directly impacting the world economy, all at the hands of the world's leading financial sector companies. There are chemicals in the water. It's an idea that's long been screamed from the mouths of conspiracy theorists. Skeptics denied the dangers of forever chemicals, and so did the companies that produced them. Those same companies also denied that they were allowing the spread of harmful chemicals into the environment, posing a massive health risk to all. But the conspiracy fanatics were right. There are chemicals in the water, and they're here to stay. In fact, PFAS is in everything, everywhere, all the time. The forever chemicals were found to weaken the immune system, increase the risk of cancer, elevate liver enzymes, increase blood pressure, and even cause developmental delays in children, from accelerated puberty to low birth rate. The term forever chemicals sounds like a term coined by the world's leading conspiracy theorists. The term itself sounds like a conspiracy theory and is often used in conjunction with views involving the leading chemical producing companies, contaminating water sources, and the reason behind various health issues. They tried to warn us not only of the impact, but also that many companies were responsible for the health risks involving the chemicals. Those who tried to warn us were labeled as environmentalist conspiracy theorists, who were just trying to get you to lessen your carbon footprint. If it hadn't been for a notable environmental attorney, we might never have known about the risk that one such company had posed to human health. Robert Billet, the attorney, first learned about DuPont, an American corporation that engaged in biotechnology, the manufacturing of chemicals and pharmaceuticals, when a local farmer made contact with him. The Parkersburg, West Virginia cattle rancher claimed that DuPont had fouled his property, and Billet began investigating. Wilbur Tennant explained that his cows were dropping like flies all over the place, and he was convinced that DuPont was responsible for it. When he tried to seek local assistance with the issue, he discovered that the company owned just about the whole town. After seeking help from the environmental attorney, who'd long been fighting against PFAS, DuPont found themselves faced with a federal lawsuit. Billet obtained a court order that forced DuPont to share all documentation relating to forever chemicals. He then received boxes of thousands of unorganized documents, and what the lawyer uncovered was sheer brazenness. It was an extraordinary cover-up of forever chemicals and contaminated water sources. Documents revealed that DuPont had instructed that the chemicals were not to be flushed into surface water or sewers, but did allow hundreds of thousands of PFOA powder to be released into the Ohio River, and 71,000 tons of laced sludge was dumped into pits, allowing the chemical to seep through the ground. DuPont was fully aware that the chemicals were cancer-causing, but had not briefed the public on their disposal of it, which ultimately ran into water sources that residents of Virginia and Ohio consumed. Further investigations revealed that surrounding residents had increased levels of PFOA, declared carcinogenic, in their bodies. Following a public brief against the company, immediate action was taken to regulate the forever chemicals, and DuPont would need to provide clean and safe water to those living near the factories. Despite paying compensation to those affected, the damage had already been done. Many who lived around the factories are still suffering from the effects of the forever chemicals they consumed all those years ago. One such individual was Robin Andrews, who's been fighting not only an autoimmune disease, but also a thyroid condition linked to the drinking water that was tainted by carcinogenic chemicals. Many had tried to warn the masses about chemical-riddled waters, fluoridation, forever chemicals, and the health risks they pose. So it turned out that the tap water is toxic idea was, in fact, true, and continues to impact many today. When unexplained car accidents, supposed cancers, and alleged heart attacks began taking out leading world figures, particularly in places such as Iran, Eastern Asia, South America, and the Middle East, many began to wonder why such things were happening, and if there wasn't an alternative explanation. An explanation that may involve the government, or more specifically, the CIA. The concept of a heart attack-inducing weapon is often associated with conspiracy theories. It's the allegation that the Central Intelligence Agency has manufactured a covert weapon that kicks off a heart attack and takes out its intended target. It sounded outlandish even to the conspiracy theorists themselves, but when 1975 rolled around, the CIA declassified their Cold War weapons and the testing that went along with it. Amid this declassification, out popped the very heart attack weapon that conspiracy theorists had long been citing. The battery-operated creation fired a dart of frozen water and shellfish toxins. Once the dart had entered its intended target, the ice would melt and release the toxin. The effects it had on the human body mimicked a heart attack, and no trace of the poison could be found during autopsies, leading to the COD being declared a heart attack and not CIA assassination. The secret CIA weapon was revealed and explained at a congressional testimony, of which there's video evidence. Aside from leaving a small hole in clothing and an almost undetectable red mark, the weapon was practically untraceable. The dart would also disappear and disintegrate into nothing. Following the Watergate scandal, the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence was formed. Known mostly as the Church Committee, its purpose was to investigate the CIA and FBI, ensuring that they were operating within the law. And they weren't. The committee found that the CIA was starting a hitman business with the help of their covert weapon. The discovery subsequently led to the filmed testimony. In the midst of the Cold War madness, only a few artifacts are as terrifying as the heart attack weapon that could end a life without so much as a trace. The James Bond-style weapon was created in the darkened labs, revealing the paranoia of the US government, which only sought to snuff out all signs of enemies, or anyone that they suspected of being an enemy, without accountability. The chemicals in the water theory kept persisting, and while there were many skeptics protesting the idea, passing it off as another out-there conspiracy, some just couldn't ignore it. Was it snake venom, fluoride, or something more sinister? Panic flooded through towns, with many residents opting to buy bottled water for consumption so that they didn't have to drink contaminated water that would make them sick. Again, they blamed their cancers, fibromyalgia, asthma, and other ailments on alleged toxic water. The narrative seemed like another act of exploitation, a get-rich-quick scheme with baseless conspiracies about tap water. But for Hinckley, California, the threat was very much real. The town saw drawn curtains in the sweltering heat that forced residents to remain indoors. Along the empty roads, pipe stubs began to take on the form of air vents to an underground bunker. But they were not air vents, but groundwater monitoring wells that were installed by Pacific Gas and Electric, who supplied the town's water. The first sign of trouble revealed itself in the early 1990s, when resident Roberta Walker and her family began suffering from ailing health. The ailing health included 5 stomach surgeries, cancer, and fibromyalgia, initially attributed to just bad genes. But when PG&E began delivering bottled water to neighbors, alarm bells rang in Walker's mind. A representative for the company said that there was only a much less toxic chemical in the tap water, chromium-3. When she decided to make contact with the company, she would discover that the tap water that they'd been consuming for years was actually laced with chromium-6. Walker and her family began testing for chromium-6, and when they got their results back, they found that the poison was lurking in their bodies. 200 million Americans across 50 states have been exposed to the element from their very tap water. The odorless, tasteless, metallic element is naturally occurring and can be found in rocks, soil, and plants. While chromium-3 is an essential human dietary nutrient, chromium-6 is the toxic mineral form. Studies revealed that breathing in the particles can cause lung cancer, and it's also been connected with liver damage and developmental harm. PG&E served 4.2 million customers, and even though they knew about the chromium-6 being in the water, they failed to inform the local water board. So the residents of Hinckley got sicker and sicker, eventually drawing the attention of Aaron Brockovich, the environmental attorney, who also has ties to Robert Billet, who exposed DuPont. Brockovich, a single mother from Los Angeles, guided the group of residents in a direct action arbitration against PG&E. Investigations into the company discovered that they had dumped chromium-6 into an unlined pond back in the 50s and 60s. The chemicals were able to make their way into the town's groundwater, which the residents would unknowingly consume. Following the outbreak of seemingly unexplained ailments, PG&E hid the crisis and misled the residents on the effect that the chemical would have on them. They dismissed the idea that it was connected to any health problems in the town. But after finding out that they'd illegally dumped the chemicals and following tests and studies on chromium-6, they were found to be responsible for the health issues that plagued this small town. It's long been rumored that the masses are being spied on by the government. The theorists warned that they're watching our every move. Every friend, family, or foe may be an undercover and secret spy. Claims of tracking chips in injection syringes have circulated since the dawn of medicine. Allegations of phone surveillance came with the modern era, and it hasn't stopped. Tinfoil hat wearers shout from rooftops about government surveillance, while skeptics retaliate with the logical question, what would they want to watch you for? What's so interesting about you that the government would waste precious resources to find out? It seemed illogical that they would waste such resources just to find out that Gary was cheating on his wife, or that Mildred didn't pay for that pair of high heels and was snickering about it to her online chat group. The government, the most secretive association of all, is a force field that attracts even the most bizarre conspiracy theories, from citizen spying to the Illuminati, shadow governing to planned assaults. The theories never stop forming, and many never believe them. It turns out, though, that on the odd occasion, a few such theories might actually be right. In fact, the whole narrative that the government would waste useful resources to find out what their most uninteresting citizens are doing is completely accurate. It all begins at the heart of the NSA, the National Security Agency, whose purpose is to ensure the safety of the country. If it wasn't for whistleblower Edward Snowden, we may never have known that we're being watched by the NSA itself. Snowden is a former technical assistant for the CIA, and back in 2013, he worked at the National Security Agency for 4 years. He was an employee of outside contractors, including Booz Allen and Dell. It was the then 29-year-old who unleashed numerous top-secret documents to the public, exposing a highly secretive organization and the ongoings behind the scenes. The first set of documents was accompanied by a letter in which Snowden wrote that he understood that he would be made to suffer for his actions. The disclosures he made revealed several global surveillance programs, many of which were being directly run by the NSA, as well as the Five Eyes intelligence alliance. This was all done with the cooperation of various telecommunication companies and the European government. Concerns about spying had already been in circulation before Snowden had revealed anything. Because of this, the top United States intelligence officials insisted that the NSA never knowingly collected any information from private phone records. Then, Snowden's disclosure revealed that they had, in fact, knowingly collected information from private phone records. Following this revelation, the officials admitted to the surveillance program conducted by the NSA and proceeded to defend the action by stating that it had played a crucial role in fighting crimes against the country. It allegedly allowed for the convictions of 4 men for providing aid to al-Shabaab militants. But the Court of Appeals revealed that the claims made by officials were inconsistent with the contents of classified records. The program was directly violating the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That same act, in Section 702, allows the United States government to engage in warrantless surveillance of American international communications. These include calls, texts, social media messages, web browsing, and emails. The government claimed that they were only targeting criminals, spies, and foreigners, but in the course of such surveillance, the government ensnared the entirety of America, a violation of constitutional rights. This wasn't the only conspiracy-turned-fact connected to the NSA. Prior to the government confirming the agency's existence, the idea of it was nothing more than a conspiracy theory. It was during the Cold War that some citizens of the United States began circulating rumors regarding the existence of a supposed secret agency, hidden in the depths of the security organizations present within the government. Washington insiders had referred to the NSA as no such agency because the government was denying its existence. The NSA is dedicated to intercepting and decoding foreign communications and apparently spying on the masses too. President Truman created the agency in 1952 and issued a classified memorandum to do so. This was followed up with the National Security Council Intelligence Directive 9. The classified directive stated that the National Security Agency would be the executive agent for foreign communications intelligence. Since both the memorandum and the directive were classified, the NSA was unknown to the public, and only guesses as to its existence were made. Since its creation in 1952, the NSA remained a secret until 1975. Following the Watergate scandal, a congressional hearing led by Senator Frank Church ultimately revealed the existence of no such agency. Congress had discovered that the agency, in collaboration with SIGINT and the Government Communications Headquarters, had been intercepting the international communication of anti-Vietnam war leaders. The Church Senate hearings led to the establishment of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which required warrants to conduct surveillance within the U.S. The hearings began looking into the opponents that the NSA had been surveying, and the list was startling. It was found that the agency was surveying Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, and Howard Backer, among other civil rights figures. For 23 years, the National Security Agency had remained a federal secret until it came into the view of the Church Committee, which was investigating allegations of domestic spying. After publishing their report on the NSA's role in intercepting communications and revealing the monitoring of American citizens, the activities of the agency have been constantly scrutinized. The NSA went from being the subject of conspiracy theory to having its existence denied to being proven true, and then to becoming the subject of controversy, whistleblowing, and scrutiny. One of the most well-known conspiracy theories concerning the United States government is that of the Illuminati, the shadow government, or the New World Order. Americans often find themselves obsessing over secret societies and the leading world figures being involved in such organizations. While it may sound like just another fear-peddling conspiracy to try and pursue society to relinquish government control over them, there is some truth to the matter. A few notable United States officials have been engaged in secret societies, or at least one specific secret society. We've already heard about the Bohemian Grove, the secret campground in Monte Rio, California, that saw the secret meetings of notable individuals. Members included Herbert Hoover, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, Clarence Thomas, Gerald Ford, Teddy Roosevelt, and George Bush. While the existence of the secret meeting ground already eerily confirms the idea that the American leaders were part of a secret society, there's one establishment that came before it. It was the Skull and Bones Society, made up of senior students at Yale University, New Haven. The organization was formed back in 1832 by William Huntington Russell and Alphonso Taft. It was reportedly created following a dispute over the election of Phi Beta Kappa. Its emblem was a daunting skull and crossbones with the number 322 beneath it. Its clubhouse was the Brownstone Building in New Haven, known as the Tomb. The Skull and Bones Society is the oldest of several other secret societies that were established on the Yale campus. The organization had mostly kept its affairs secret, but for years it did publish its membership roster. Some of the members were high achievers, others were descendants of socially prominent families, and a few more would later become the presidents of the United States. George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, and William Howard Taft had once been members of this secret society, only to become presidents later. Other notable powerful American families who were mentioned on the roster include the Rockefellers, Vanderbilts, Fords, Phelps, Pillsbury, Whitneys, and Walkers. There were also other household names including John F. Kerry, John Hersey, Henry Luce, Prescott Bush, and many, many more. The mysterious entity exercised much influence over the Yale students, so it was important not to offend the wrong people. Every freshman hoped that they would be accepted into the Brotherhood so that they could project to become a household name, a president or a high-up official. Whatever had been going on in the secret society, which is yet to be revealed, greatly influenced the members and their career paths. This early involvement in such an establishment may have given rise to their prominence. One of the world's leading conspiracy theories is that of Big Pharma, the collective term for all the major multinational pharmaceutical companies. It's the most profitable industry in the world, which has given rise to several major theories. For years, theorists have warned that these massive corporations are acting in an incredibly dangerous and secretive manner, their sinister ways directly harming patients. Some have suggested that the pharmaceutical industry is concealing effective treatments or intentionally worsening a wide range of diseases, all of which are in pursuit of higher profits. Such claims state that the general public is living in a state of ignorance, and perhaps we are. Hundreds of doctors earned big money from drug companies was the headline of an ABC News article. The article revealed an extensive investigation carried out by ProPublica, which uncovered an alarming act committed by the pharmaceutical industry and the trusty nurses and doctors from whom we seek healthcare. In 2010, ProPublica found that several pharmaceutical companies were paying out over $250 million to some 17,000 doctors and nurses across the United States. ProPublica, an investigative journalism group, compiled and published their findings that revealed how doctors were being paid by leading companies to not only promote certain types of medications, but also serve as medical consultants and even speak at conferences. 7 major pharmaceutical makers who manufacture a staggering 35% of medications sold to America had made payments of $100,000 to almost 400 doctors, which they publicly revealed. Such companies included AstraZeneca, Cephalon, Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Pfizer, and GlaxoSmithKline. Only 2 of these 7 companies had disclosed the information willingly. But that's just 7 of the 70 pharmaceutical companies operating in the United States that have publicly disclosed their financial relationship with healthcare providers. This professional transaction does not necessarily mean that the healthcare providers are prescribing harmful medications, but it could mean that they're prescribing unnecessary ones with more side effects, or ones that require other medications to manage said side effects. It's also not illegal for healthcare professionals to be hired or paid by such companies, but it is unethical for the financial relationship to not be publicly disclosed. The ProPublica investigation further revealed that the top 15 pharmaceutical companies in the United States, which make up 68% of the prescription market, had not been disclosing physician payments. Following these discoveries, a healthcare reform legislation called the Physician Payments Sunshine Act was brought into effect. The reason that this type of transparency matters is because there are some prescription medications that can be harmful to the public who are still recovering from an opioid epidemic. It's only instinct to blame addicts for abusing such pharmaceuticals, but those medications didn't materialize out of thin air. Investigation revealed that OxyContin manufacturer Purdue was completely aware that their product may result in addictive behaviors, yet they continued to sell it. Internal documents inevitably revealed marketing memos suggesting that they'd acted with the intent to mislead not just the consumers, but the very doctors they were paying in an effort to generate a higher income. Purdue had spent millions of dollars to market the pharmaceutical to doctors as a better alternative to the generic versions. Investigations such as these reveal the truth behind the conspiracy theories. Big Pharma's primary objective is to make as much money as it possibly can. It's also the pharmaceutical industry that has the moral responsibility to protect consumers. Whether these two objectives can ever coexist, well, that remains unknown. Antarctica has been the site of many mysteries that remain unsolved over the years, and a discovery that was made there in 2024 has only bolstered the area's reputation for being strange. The discovery was made by a Reddit user who was using Google Maps to look at a certain area in the Antarctic. After stumbling across something truly unusual, he posted the area's coordinates to the platform. When fellow Redditors followed these coordinates, they immediately knew why the original poster was so excited by what they had found. In the snowy landscape, they saw something that looked like a doorway, and almost immediately, speculation ran rife. Since the entrance is situated on the side of a mountain, some users suggested that it leads further into the mountain and that it might be the entrance to a secret military base that was being hidden from the public, but which had somehow become exposed. The nearest human presence to this site is the Japanese Showa Research Outpost Station on East Ungle Island in Queen Maud Land. Here, scientists conduct research on astronomy, meteorology, earth sciences, and biology. While most users joked about the doorway, suggesting it might be the entrance to Bigfoot's underground cave, others took the matter more seriously. Some suggested it might be the long-rumored Antarctic bunker that was said to have been built by the orders of Adolf Hitler during the Second World War. Then there were the inevitable suggestions that it might be a facility that was built by extraterrestrials, and that it's used by these beings whenever they visit our planet. According to some conspiracy theorists, the alien base has existed in Antarctica for centuries and is still being used today for reasons unknown. Luckily, several experts stepped in to explain what they were looking at in the image. While the structure might look like a doorway to an underground area, most experts believe that it's a natural formation and that it only looks like a doorway by coincidence. One glaciologist explained that the area is covered in fast-moving ice and that the so-called doorway is actually part of a glacier that ran aground in the shadows and then started to melt. The eerie blue color of the formation is thanks to the ice that's concealed beneath the snow, which has now been exposed to reveal the beautiful color. If true, as time passes, this doorway is sure to become smaller and smaller, and hopefully it will put their concerns to rest. Number 9. When archaeologists find an artifact that contains some kind of writing or symbols, it results in many theories being put forward to explain what the symbols might mean. And in many cases, the suggestions border on the absurd. The Judakala rock is no exception. It's believed that Westerners first saw the rock sometime in the 19th century, when a researcher named James Mooney traveled into the mountains of Jackson County in North Carolina to study Cherokee legends, and the rock was shown to him. He wrote that the entire rock is covered in petroglyphs, and that he was told by the Cherokee that the site where the stone lies is considered sacred. They often held ceremonies in the area, and also had a few strange tales to tell. The name of the rock, Judakala, refers to one legend that is spoken about by the Cherokee. It's the name of a giant that used to live in the area, according to folklore, and he used the stone to mark its territory. It's said that Judakala used to live in these mountains and that he protected his home fiercely. He's described as having slanted eyes and 7 fingers on each hand. The rock contains symbols that look like 7-digit claws, which are said to be his actual handprints, and a line that's drawn on the rock is said to be the boundary that no one was allowed to cross, since doing so meant that they'd crossed into Judakala's territory, where he used to hunt. Mooney also learned that the name Judakala means he has them slanting, or slant-eyed giant. Not only was Judakala massive, but he also had some other very strange abilities that have never been explained. Tradition holds that he was able to teleport from the top of the mountain to the tops of any other mountain in the region in the blink of an eye. He was also able to fly through the air and could control the weather, including bringing lightning and thunder whenever he felt like it. But he was able to speak to the people living in the area at the time, and was known to, on occasion, relocate them to the spirit realm, which suggests he was a deity of some kind, with powers beyond our comprehension. Researchers who have studied the stone state that it has a curvilinear shape and that it's carved out of sandstone. They were able to count more than 1,500 individual petroglyphs across its surface. These symbols include stick figures meant to represent the human form, and 2 7-fingered handprints, and thousands of other carvings, including cup marks. It's believed that the rock is very old, dating back to between 2000 and 3000 BC, as is evidenced by tools found in the surrounding area. For now, the stone remains as mysterious as ever, and only time will tell if we ever learn its true purpose before the symbols completely disappear. Number 8. When it comes to inexplicable events that have taken place throughout history, the Bermuda Triangle remains one of the most mysterious places on Earth, despite many of the strange cases that have occurred there having now been explained. For many years, planes, ships, and individuals have suddenly disappeared without a trace in the Bermuda Triangle, and many of these occurrences are yet to be explained. It's been suggested that extraterrestrials were to blame, since they were abducting humans for reasons unknown, or that the area contained strange magnetic fields that caused people and mechanical equipment to become confused, leading to them becoming lost, never to be seen again. Some people even suggested that this was the site of the fabled city of Atlantis, and that it still lies at the bottom of the ocean, wreaking all kinds of havoc in the sky and on the water above. But in 2012, reports started to emerge that something very strange was found in the water in the triangle, and it took no time at all for the conspiracy theories to rear their heads. In several notable news publications, it was claimed that a scientist named Dr. Meyer Verlag was conducting research in the area when she discovered a pyramid 3 times the size of the Giza pyramid in Egypt beneath the water, and that it was constructed out of a type of crystal. It was further reported that Verlag believed the pyramid was responsible for the strange disappearances that have taken place in that area, and that it warranted years of scientific study. Furthermore, it was said that she then presented her findings in attendance at a press conference that was held in the Bahamas, and she was then able to provide the location of the pyramid thanks to exact coordinates. As soon as these reports were published, people who were interested in the Bermuda Triangle started suggesting theories as to what the pyramid was and who had created it. Since it was said to be constructed from crystal, many people believed that it held strange mystic powers that could heal the sick, or that it would reveal the paranormal realm. There were, of course, claims that it was an extraterrestrial structure that we were never meant to find. Some people suggested it may just be a normal pyramid that was built by an ancient civilization that used to live in the area before it was covered with water. Some articles claimed that the scientific community around the world was shaken to its core by the discovery, but the truth is far more mundane. No evidence has ever been found that Dr. Verlag even exists, or that such a pyramid was ever found in the ocean. Number 7. In 2017, a toy called a fidget spinner took the world by storm. The simple device was meant to be used as a stress reliever, and in no time, millions of people were rushing out to stores to purchase them, and it quickly became a global fad. For the uninitiated, fidget spinners are usually constructed from metal, and they contain 3 or more outer rings that spin around a central ring, which is held in between 2 fingers on a person's hand, usually the thumb and the middle finger. When the toy is spun, the outer rings spin between the palm of the hand and the fingers holding onto it, and many people tried to get it to spin for as long as possible, and then compared theirs to those owned by their friends. It was all meant to be a little bit of fun, while also providing the user with the relaxing fidget toy that claimed to improve concentration. But not everyone saw it for the lighthearted product that it was. It quickly started irritating some people since they were on sale everywhere, and they were, on occasion, being used in inappropriate locations, such as churches or restaurants. But while some people considered it a minor inconvenience, one pastor saw it as far more of a threat. Pastor Juan Mariano Avalos, who hails from Paraguay, created a video in which he claimed that fidget spinners were the work of the devil, and that the real aim of the toy was to convert as many children and teenagers to Satanism as possible. This may seem absurd to most people, but he went on to explain how he drew this conclusion. He pointed to the way in which the spinner is meant to be held. Since the thumb and middle finger are used to hold the device, the pinky, index, and ring fingers are usually extended outwards. Avalos believes that, viewed from the right angle, this caused the hand to look like it's signaling 3 sixes, which is noted in the Bible as being the number of the beast. But his evidence didn't end there. He added that if the user's ring finger is placed on the palm rather than extended, the result is the sign of the devil, which is usually seen during rock and heavy metal concerts, and which was popularized by the famous heavy metal vocalist Ronnie James Dio. While Avalos was very serious about these claims, it quickly drew the ire of thousands of people online, who took to social media platforms to make fun of the footage. They asked whether the hand gesture for OK is also evil, since it also results in the hand forming the 666 symbol. Luckily, cooler heads prevailed, and most people took little notice of the video, shrugging it off as an unnecessary conspiracy theory that could do more harm than good, and the fidget spinner craze continued unabated for quite some time. Number 6. In August of 2023, wildfires broke out on the island of Maui in Hawaii, and it was recorded as the deadliest natural disaster that Hawaii has ever seen. The blaze caused about $5.5 billion worth of damage, destroyed more than 2,000 different structures, and claimed over 100 lives while leaving thousands of people destitute. 3 of the fires that broke out would not have been as devastating as they were, but they were fueled by Hurricane Dora, a Category 4 storm that generated massive wind speeds that only helped spread the flames. The first of the fires broke out in the early morning hours of the 8th of August that year, and thanks to dry conditions on the island, started to spread at an alarming rate. A red flag alert was issued. It would later be determined that the first fire was started by broken power lines that ignited dry grass and plants around a utility pole. And before long, thousands of lives were in danger as the strong winds spread the fire to different parts of the island. Houses were destroyed in mere minutes. Cars had to be left where they were by fleeing residents, and those who made it to safety had to find shelter quickly. More than 27,000 people were in need of aid once the flames were doused, and luckily people from all over the world responded to their plight with donations that took several forms, such as money, food, and clothing. The island's residents were then left with the unenviable task of rebuilding their lives and homes, which would take some time. But while all of this was happening, some people took to the internet to reveal their conspiracy theories as to what caused the blaze, despite an official investigation already having been carried out. Many people started posting to social media sites, claiming that the fire wasn't a natural disaster, and that the report, stating that it was caused by downed power lines, was false. Instead, they believed it was caused by something far more sinister. One of the prevailing theories was that the blaze was intentionally set with the use of direct energy weapons. One video showed a massive explosion taking place on the island in the minutes before the fire started, and it quickly racked up millions of views. But it would later be revealed that the footage originated from Chile, and it showed a transformer exploding. In another clip, Wyola Church was shown being struck by a laser beam before it burst into flames, but it was quickly debunked when it was found to have been digitally altered. Other pieces of footage were found to show controlled fires in other parts of the world, including Ohio, and the launch of a SpaceX rocket that was completed in California in 2018. Some people claimed that the fire was suspicious since buildings and vehicles were gutted while many trees remained upright. This was easy to explain since large trees take a long time to burn, and in many instances the fires only affected the bark and outer layers of the trees. Theories that the fires were started by the wealthy residents of the island in an effort to obtain more land were also dismissed. But to this day, some conspiracy theorists still believe that someone in power orchestrated the fires, despite no proof of this ever being found. Number 5. During wartime, opposing forces will often try to spread misinformation in enemy territory in an effort to turn their own people against their government. It's a tactic that's been used throughout history, and while it isn't always effective, it has, on occasion, had an impact on the outcome of a war. But there is another alarming trend that has come to light amid the war that's being fought in Ukraine. Many conspiracy theorists have started spreading misinformation about the conflict, resulting in some truly bizarre claims, one of which is that the war isn't actually even real. One of the most viewed videos, as far as conspiracy is concerned, was uploaded to the internet just weeks after the war started. It shows a man in a military uniform having what looks like biological material applied to his face. The person who posted the video claimed that this man was a crisis actor who was paid to participate in the fake war, and that the footage was proof that they were all being deceived into thinking that a war was being fought. But it was then discovered that the footage was actually from the set of a Ukrainian TV series called Contamin. The man shown on screen was indeed an actor, but he had no part to play in the real war, and the video's poster was exposed as a conspiracy theorist. In a similar incident, footage shows dozens of body bags lying on the ground, and at one point, something inside one of the bags starts to move. The man inside the bag then unzips it, and a photographer rushes over to assist him. This convinced many people that he was paid to pretend that he'd lost his life in the war. But this again was quickly debunked. The footage was taken during a climate change protest that took place in Vienna much earlier. The people seen in the clip are from the Friday for Future climate change movement. Strangely, the very same clip was used by conspiracy theorists earlier, claiming that the people in the bags were crisis actors who were pretending they lost their lives due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Then there was a clip shown during a Fox News broadcast in which 2 Ukrainian soldiers could be seen carrying firearms, but many viewers pointed out that the weapons looked like they were made of wood, and soon conspiracy theorists started sharing the clip, claiming it was proof the war was a hoax. But again, their claims were disproven when it was revealed that the footage was recorded months earlier during a training course that was attended by civilian volunteers. These men and women decided to join the military in case of a Russian invasion, and were being trained how to properly handle a large firearm. Number 4. A quick internet search for famous people who have gone missing will see one name come up repeatedly: the former Prime Minister of Australia, Harold Holt. Holt's disappearance has never been solved, and conspiracy theorists have had a field day ever since, insisting that something untoward caused him to vanish. On the 17th of December, 1967, Holt drove to Cheviot Beach in Victoria, Australia in his Pontiac. He was known to have a love for swimming and spearfishing, to the point where he would hold his breath while attending Parliament, so that he could dive deeper during his snorkeling trips. He'd been to Cheviot Beach many times before and knew the area very well. He was planning on finally relaxing on the beach since he'd attended his last cabinet meeting of the year, and was looking forward to spending Christmas with his friends and family. Holt's neighbor, Marjorie Gillespie, and her daughter and 2 of Holt's friends, Martin Simpson and Alan Stewart, accompanied Holt to the beach that day, and they could never have expected what happened next. He'd entered the water for a swim despite the conditions being rough. In what Marjorie described as a mere moment, he was engulfed by the waves, and for a few moments they could see his head emerge, but then it disappeared beneath the waves, and the Prime Minister never resurfaced. What followed was one of the largest search operations in the country's history. Rescue crews, helicopters, and volunteers scoured the beach and waves in hopes that they could find him, but their efforts were in vain. This particular beach was known for its strong undercurrents, and at least 2 people had disappeared there in the past, never to be seen again. Stewart, who'd also been swimming when Holt went under, recounted that he could feel the currents pulling at him, and he knew that the conditions were dangerous, but was unable to convince his friend. The sea was so violent that one rescue boat overturned, and it was estimated that the beach was being pounded by waves as high as 8 feet. On the 5th of January, 1968, the search was officially called off, and Holt was never found. His disappearance was truly a tragedy, and many people found it hard to believe that such a prominent person could go out for a swim only to lose their lives thanks to a simple misjudgment. This has led to many conspiracy theories being suggested over the decades, including one that claims Holt was a spy. This theory first came to light thanks to a book authored by Anthony Gray, which is entitled "The Prime Minister Was a Spy." He suggested that Holt was secretly working for the Chinese government, and that his disappearance was actually a carefully orchestrated ruse in which he was picked up by a Chinese submarine before being taken to Beijing, where he lived out the rest of his life in peace. But the water at Cheviot Beach would have been far too shallow to allow for a submarine to pass by unnoticed, and these claims weren't taken seriously by many. All these theories remain mere speculation, but they persist online and are unlikely to go away anytime soon. Number 3. Without a doubt, the most prominent conspiracy theories to be found on the internet today have to do with extraterrestrials that are said to visit our planet on a regular basis. The online world is littered with footage of flying objects that are rumored to be alien spacecraft, strange lights in the sky, and strange-looking beings that, according to conspiracy websites, could only hail from another planet. Some aliens are said to be friendly and want nothing more than to teach humans about the myriad of worlds that lie beyond our reach, but others are rumored to be aggressive and dangerous, with an agenda to wipe out all life on Earth. Many people claim that an extraterrestrial race called the Anunnaki has been visiting Earth for centuries, and that they control many of the events that take place around the world. Others believe that they created humans for a single purpose: to mine as much gold as possible. The Anunnaki are considered by conspiracy theorists to be ancient astronauts who were seen by ancient Egyptians, the Maya, and other long-gone civilizations who helped shape human society into what it is today. Others believe that merely uttering the word Anunnaki might result in being abducted, or at the very least, a string of bad luck befalling them. It's been suggested that they live on a planet called Nibiru, and that they set out to find sources of gold after the climate on that planet started to change. The theory holds that the Anunnaki believed the answer to their problem lay in gold particles that could be suspended into their atmosphere to reflect the sun's rays. It's been suggested that they first tried to mine gold from the Mediterranean Sea with technology aboard their ships, but they soon found they were not collecting enough to fulfill their needs. These miners, called the Igigi, decided to lay down their tools, claiming that the work was too hard and a solution had to be found. The decision was then made to combine Anunnaki DNA and DNA from Homo erectus to create humans who would be used as slaves in gold mines around the world. Some theories suggest that the Great Pyramid of Giza is actually a structure that was used by the Anunnaki to create gold from scratch, and that one claim of alien visitation in Peru is proof of their existence. The Coricancha Temple, which was built by the Incas, is said to contain a symbol of a golden disc, which, according to some people, serves as proof that these ancient people were visited by a gold-plated extraterrestrial craft, and that they were then taught how to extract gold from the ground beneath their feet. It's also been suggested that the Barberton Greenstone Belt in South Africa was one of the Anunnaki's most prominent mining sites, since some of the gold mines that have been found there are centuries old. Some people believe that they're older than the human race, and hence feel that the mines were created by these alien creatures in a bid to save their own planet. Some theories go as far as to suggest the fabled city of Atlantis was created by these visitors, and that it was only lost after their mining operations were complete. Number 2. Since we landed the first humans on the moon in 1969, our knowledge of our solar system has broadened exponentially thanks to advancements in technology and a better understanding of the stars, planets, and other objects surrounding our planet. Modern telescopes can now see much further than any before, and we're now aware of some very strange objects in space, such as black holes, space dust, and in some cases, seemingly empty sections of space that defy all logic. But despite all of this advancement, some conspiracy theorists have claimed that space doesn't actually exist, as outlandish as that may seem. Some claim that we're being lied to by our respective governments, and that we're either living in a computer simulation or that we've been sucked into a black hole with no means of escape. These theories claim that if the latter theory is true, our reality would be two-dimensional, and hence there would be no such thing as a third dimension, which would mean that the concept of space couldn't possibly exist. Instead, we're living in a 3D simulation that creates the illusion of space, and we've been left none the wiser, at least until conspiracy theorists realized what was actually going on. But even among these theorists, there is some disagreement. One side believes that we aren't actually living on a planet. They suggest that we eke out of our existence on a flat plane made up of land and some water. To create the illusion that we're on Earth, a light show is projected into the sky above this planet, leaving us with the illusion that space exists, and the millions of stars, planets, suns, and moons can be found in the trillions of galaxies that we've observed over the years. But that would, of course, mean that these galaxies also don't exist. And since we have no hope of traveling these vast distances to another galaxy, there's no way of disproving this, according to those who subscribe to this theory. On the other hand, some theorists believe that Earth is a disc-shaped landmass that's enclosed around its edges by a wall of ice that has never been reached by any explorers. They also suggest that the entire planet is enclosed in a dome-shaped glass cover that ensures we can never leave or explore anything that lies beyond. With these theories come a slew of others. Since space is said to be artificial, it would be impossible to send a craft to explore the universe, and hence the moon landing never took place. It would also mean that climate change never existed, and it was thought up by the governments of the world to divert attention away from space exploration, as people start to focus more on preserving the Earth, rather than wondering what lies beyond our reach. The theory holds that meteor showers and impacts, solar and lunar eclipses, black holes, comets, and sun flares are all the work of fiction. Number 1. More than 400 years after his passing, William Shakespeare is still considered to be one of the greatest writers history has ever seen. His plays are still performed in some of the most famous theaters around the world today, and his works continue to inspire people from all walks of life. But his works aren't without controversy. Many historians believe that Shakespeare's works were actually written by someone else, and that he merely signed his name to these plays in order to become a famous writer. Others have suggested that the plays were written by someone using the pseudonym Shakespeare, since their work could not have been taken seriously otherwise. One theory holds that the famous bard was none other than the 17th Earl of Oxford, Edward de Vere. It's known that Vere was a writer during the 16th century, and that he did most of his writing in secret. He refused to have any of his work published under his own name, possibly because it would have been seen as unbecoming of a gentleman of his standing to become a knowledgeable writer. In one speech presented by Gabriel Harvey in 1578, he stated that Vere's countenance shakes spears, which is considered by many to be a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that he was writing under the name Shakespeare. But most historians believe he was merely paying tribute to the Earl, and that he was suggesting that his enemies were afraid of him. It's no secret that Vere enjoyed reading poetry, and that he was a patron of the arts during his lifetime. He often visited theaters and commissioned several books, while also having others translated. Furthermore, he's also known to have sponsored one men's and one boys' troupe of actors, and even leased the Blackfriars Theatre to the boys' troupe during the 1580s. But the evidence in support of this theory doesn't end there. It's known that while he was in his 20s, Vere often visited the studio of the artist Titan, which is situated in Venice. The Shakespeare poem, Venus and Adonis, makes reference to Adonis wearing a bonnet, which can also be seen in one of the Titan's paintings, and this has led many conspiracy theorists to believe the poem was written by Vere under the Shakespeare pseudonym. One of the strongest arguments in favor of this theory comes from the translation of the poem Metamorphosis by the poet Ovid. It's known that the poem served as a great source of inspiration for Shakespeare, but not many people know that it was translated into English by Vere's uncle, Arthur Golding, and that he and Vere were living in the same house while the translation was being completed. In the Shakespeare play Hamlet, we're introduced to a character named Polonius. At one point, he mentions a group of men who have a falling out while playing tennis, which is seen by some as further proof that Vere was, in fact, Shakespeare. In 1579, Vere was embroiled in a bitter rivalry with Sir Philip Sidney. They both had fallen in love with the same woman. They had opposing views on politics and had very different literary tastes, which often resulted in arguments. On one occasion, Sidney was playing tennis with a few of his friends when Vere asked if he could join them. When Sidney refused to acknowledge him, Vere called him a puppy, and many believe that he then recounted this incident while he was authoring Hamlet. It's also been suggested that Sidney was parodied in the plays Twelfth Night, Merry Wives, and Henry V as a result of the quarrel. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.